For everybody who's here, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kaylee Ekstrom, and I am the event coordinator with the Minnesota PGA, working a lot in junior golf with Carla Hagen, our junior director. And tonight we have a special guest joining us, Mr. Brad Pluth, PGA certified, part of our Minnesota section, who is just going to be hanging out with you guys for a little bit, giving you his expertise in the game of golf. So thank you, Brad, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everybody is muted right now, which is awesome. So we can all be sure to hear Brad. But as the night moves forward, you can interact with Brad as he's asking questions or anything like that. And you can unmute yourself when the time is right. And also we do have the chat feature. If you kind of want to pop in there, either is available for you. But as far as the night goes, I'm going to hand it over to Brad and we'll get started.
All right. I'll let you kind of run through that one, Kaylee, if you would.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple achievements of Brad. I think most notable probably is a husband and father of 4. But also he started the golf achievement in 1998 and coached a lot of junior golfers, as you can see there. Mr. Carter Deuce, who is our PGA Junior Player of the Year, has over 800 golfers qualify for the state tournament in 12 states, 110 golfers playing collegiate golf over the last 15 years, started and ran the U.S. Kids Minneapolis Local Tour, has been involved as a PGA Junior Golf School Director, played and taught golf in over 16 countries, worked with 185 Golf Digest top 100 instructors, and
falling off the list.
Yeah, made 19 hole-in-ones.
There you go. That's my claim to fame right now. Working on number 20.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So when I was invited to present, I was thinking back what I would like to know when I was a kid, or like middle school, high school. And it came back to, I didn't know how to practice. So I've been coaching again for 25 years almost, and we kind of go through this process, or my improvement cycle kind of starts with them, especially for competitive juniors or competitive players, is an on-course assessment. So we take a look and identify where you're taking your shots, off the tee, approach shots, wedge shots, putts, and then kind of make a game plan around that. From there, we move to natural movement patterns of your swing. I'm not a very big believer. I like looking at your natural movement patterns. I don't want my players trying to be somebody else. They're designed the way they should be. We just look for patterns of how they generate power, balance, coordination, and consistency. That's just based on how people move. So I've got a wide range of assessments to help develop that. And then looking into the 10 skills assessment, which I'll share a little bit tonight, but that also leads to purposeful practice. So what is purposeful practice? So to me, purposeful practice is, it must have a goal or a purpose. So again, you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve during a practice session. You're trying to improve your putting, your wedges, your approach shots, or your tee shots, right? So let's get a little bit more specific. You need to get feedback, right? So feedback comes in all different shapes and sizes. Some of it's feel, especially if you're hitting into a net this time of year. Some of it is the ball when you're outside. What's the ball doing? So I talk a lot about games, drills, and exercises. So I'm going to share with you tonight my 4 favorite games. And then so you can benchmark your improvement. Golf's one of those games that you get to keep score and post your score right after your name when you get done. So I like creating games and contests and scoreboards within my academy to do that. Then lastly, the golfers push outside their comfort zone. So once you have a benchmark for some of these games, then you're trying to do either one more or one less as appropriate. So in my, this is my basic, core 4 skills assessment. Again, we talked a little bit about kind of segmenting a game into 4 categories of putting, wedges, approach shots, and tee shots. And these are kind of the benchmarks. I'm gonna run through these here pretty quick. So first one is distance putting. So for this game, you're going to use one ball and you're going to play 9 holes. So you're going to start 5 steps away and then hole out, record your score. So there's 9 boxes there, so you can record your score. And you're going to move 6 steps in a different direction and repeat all the way to 13 steps, or again, play 9 holes and then keep track of your score. So the score on the bottom will relate to your scoring average or handicap on the top, okay? So now you've got a benchmark. So let's say the first time you did it, you got 24. So that would lead me to believe that you probably shoot between 92 and 95, or you've got about a 20 to 23 handicap. And if you want to get a little bit better, you got to get to 22, and then eventually 19, and then 18, 17, right? So now you've got a way to benchmark your improvement. Any questions there, or you can kind of throw them in the chat? Makes sense to most? All right, I see some heads nodding. I appreciate that. And I'll be kind of perusing through the chat. If you've got questions, just pop it in there, and we'll try to answer those, or we can go over it here at the end as well. So the second game is probably my favorite game because it incorporates both wedges and putting, and it's 9 holes up and down. So for this one, you're going to grab 3 balls, and you're going to take 10 steps away, 10 yards, and drop them and play them as they lie, unless they're too close to each other that you're going to hit them, right? But it's really important to learn how to play those shots from bad lies, not just good lies, okay? So first time I want you to go through this is to use one club, or grab your most lofted wedge and just do it with one wedge. Again, you're going to play 3 balls from 10 yards and then putt them out, record your score. Then 3 balls from 15 yards, putt them out, record your score. And 3 balls from 20 yards, putt them out. So a total of 9 holes, okay? Now, if you want to play on tour, the average is about 66%, or getting 2 out of 3 up and down. Some years it's 70%. So that's kind of your benchmark. Now, you don't have to be perfect. That's the good news. Again, 2 out of 3 and not 3 putting or missing your green kind of helps with that game. Okay. Any questions on that one? So I call this, sometimes I'll call this game 21 because our goal is to get to 21 shots or less. All right. All right, poll time. So again, if you would, in your chat box, I want you to take a guess. How long does it take to develop a skill? Now, a skill would be considered your grip, okay? Or your stance width, or maybe a half swing back position or something like that. Okay? So I want you to pop in the chat box, how many correct repetitions does it take to develop a skill? So Quinn guessed B or C. I'm going to recommend that you have one answer. Okay, a bunch of E's. You guys are pretty good. Olivia is our first right guess at E, or 1,500 correct repetitions. So there's some debate on this, and if you guess 500, there's some universities, I think the University of Chicago said 500 correct repetitions will get there. UCLA said about 1,000. I used Stanford, they said 1,500 correct repetitions. So I'm gonna go with the high side because I'd rather overtrain than undertrain, okay? So the correct answer would, to me anyways, be E. So now if you break that down, right, that's maybe 50 correct repetitions a day for how many days? What was that? 75 days, right? So it takes a while. So coincidentally, guess how many shots Tiger Woods hit a day when he was training at his peak? There's only one guy that hit more than him on tour, and it was 1,500. So he's acquiring one skill more or less every day, where I think the average golfer probably hits 1,500 balls a year and expects to develop skills quickly, but just not realistic at times. All right, back to the skills. So our third skills is approach shots, okay? This is kind of a fun one. I think you'll appreciate this one. So for approach shots, I use 150 yards. Now, if you wanted to use a 7-iron distance or whatever club, you could change the distance here to 100 yards, 125 yards, whatever you choose. I just happen to throw 150 yards in, but you can probably replace that with a 7-iron. So if your 7-iron goes 110 yards, goes 190 yards, or I've got high school players that are hitting it like 210 now. It's ridiculous. We're going to use a gate that is either 4 fingers wide, which is about 10%, and then you progress. So if you can do 4 fingers wide and get 6 out of 10, then you're going to go down to 9%, or at 150 yards, it's like 13.5 yards left to right. So kind of easier to use a launch monitor with this one. If you've got TrackMan or Flight Scope or any of those great tools, it's easier to do, but you can also do it outside just by using your fingers. Okay, so 8% is about 3 fingers, and 6% is 2 fingers. So you've got 2 fingers left or right of the target when you're trying to hit those shots. And those are the benchmarks that you're trying to reach. So if you want to be a single-digit handicap, you'd be in that 5 to 9 handicap range, scoring average of about 77 to 81. Your goal would be to get 6 out of 10 shots into that 150 category. Right? If you want to be scratch, it's going to be 7 out of 10 from 2 fingers apart. Okay. Any questions on that one? All right, keep moving here. There we go. Almost skipped one. Tee shots. Fourth skill is tee shots. Everybody likes the long ball. So fairways are typically 30 yards wide, but canopy of the tree or woods to water is typically 50 yards wide. On most good golf courses, it's actually quite formulaic the way architects design golf courses. So this may surprise some of you that it's so low, but best players on tour are only hitting 70% of the fairways, which is really only about 10 out of 14. Right? Again, this should relieve a few of you because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep it in between the trees. Okay? So in this first series, or that first 3, your goal is to get 4 out of 14. So I use 14 here because if you play 18 holes and you're competing, playing 18 holes, you're gonna hit 14 tee shots. There's 4 par 3s. So typically you don't hit too many drivers on par 3s, but depending on your age and ability, you may. Once you can get 4 out of 14 from 50 yards and you progress to a 40-yard wide fairway, and once you get 6 out of 14 there, then you shrink it again, a 30-yard wide fairway. So if you've got posts or poles in the back of your range, those are usually set at about 10 yards, maybe 12 yards apart. And so you can use those posts like 4 yards wide, or 4 posts wide is about 30 yards, 5 posts wide is 40 yards, 6 posts wide is about 50 yards. Okay. And then if you can get 8 out of 14, a little bit better than 50% from 30 yards, when you're in a or 9 out of 14, that would be exceptional. Okay. All right. So all 10 skills, there's actually 9 on that page, but I'll talk about that 10 skill here in a minute, are listed on my Purposeful practice form. If you want a copy of that, I would be happy to send this over to Kaylee here at the end and get this out to you. So you can use this. So this form has a kind of a front and back. You got the front side with the games, and then the explanation of the games if you forget, and you can come back to this video, or you can just read the directions on the back of the table there. Now the 10th skill is club head speed. So this is a big topic lately. I know those guys over at Ripstick are going to do a great job with this next week, but there's very direct correlation between, or direct correlation, or what's the word I'm looking for? A link between your handicap and your club head speed, right? So the higher your club head speed, the lower your handicap can be. So if you want to be a scratch golfer, your club head speed probably needs to average about 106 miles an hour, okay? And this is for probably a competing teenage golfer, and then it just goes up from there. But if your club head speed's only 95, it's pretty tough to break 80. Okay, so speed kills. If we have anybody that's taking driver's ed class, you understand what that means. So my favorite way, and kind of the cheapest way to do speed training, I use 3 clubs. Again, your wedges are the heaviest ones. And then, so you're gonna use 3 clubs and swing both right-handed and left-handed. And then kneeling, so literally on your knees, you're gonna make a big swing. And then you're gonna take a stomp with your lead foot. And then Happy Gilmore style. I think everybody knows what that means, or that running jump, or sometimes they call it Happy Gilmore crow hops, kind of like almost like a baseball, but you're going to take a little running start with a baseball. You want to take a video, or if you want to see a sample, just go to YouTube and type in Brad Palouse golf speed training. You can find that on there. So that one is free. Those same protocols actually come from Super Speed Golf. And you can, I love Super Speed. I've been using Super Speed, I think, for 12 years now. I've had a number of junior golfers that have used Super Speed for 5 years that picked up over 10 miles an hour every year. James Sherwood happens to be one of those. He started with me when he was in 7th grade and 85 miles an hour. And by the time he was a senior, he was 125 to 129 miles an hour just by using the Super Speed. So it does work. Gripstick, those guys are awesome. Little cheaper, 180 bucks, one tool, makes a lot of sense. I've used it a little bit. I haven't used it as much as Super Speed, but same concept. And the latest one that I found last week down at the PGA show was the stack system. So this one pretty cool as well, but a little bit more expensive. It's got a few different gadgets, and it includes an app to lead you through a progression. Sasha McKenzie from Canada, probably the world's most or foremost biomechanics writer on golf, developed that with a guy from Ping. So it's a pretty cool system if you got 400 bucks to invest into your game. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip here and we'll get into periodization. So periodization is just kind of a fancy word for planning, okay? So you'll kind of see there's 4 seasons in the golf space, right? So you've got your season prep, your preseason, your tournament season, and your postseason. You could also say season prep would be, so in this case, this is for our competitive golfers. Actually, let me show you one other. So I have these for different age groups. So if you're a little bit younger, this is kind of what I'm gonna recommend. So there's a train to learn is my young guys, those 8 to 12-year-old guys. Train to play is 11 to 16. Train to compete can be that 14 to 21-year-old category. I have gone as low as 11. Don't fall in love with the ages. Those are just recommendations. Okay? I'll go through these here in a minute. All right, so since we are in February, this is how I kind of break down my training at my academy at Twin Cities Orthopedic in Eden Prairie. So we look at scoring mindset. What do great golfers think about before, during, and after shot? And we'll usually pick a theme for the month. This month it happens to be conditioning. So who thinks it's important to be in good condition to walk 4 to 8 miles on a round of golf? I see some hands popping up there, right? So you need to be in good condition, not only with your body, but your mind, right? So scoring mindset and kind of exploring a little bit. I had the Bethel team in this weekend, and we talked a lot about, you know, what do you think about before a shot or even before a round? What do you need to carry in your bag? What kind of things do you do after the round so you feel confident going into the next round, right? They had some troubles going into the second day of the MIAC last year, so we had a couple discussions on how to process their post-round recovery, or how do you manage your emotions to play your best. So again, if I ask the question, what's the most important shot you'll ever hit? Should be the next one, right? So the next shot is the most important. Okay? Course strategy. We do a lot in the simulators that we have, but being able to kind of chunk down, again, playing away from trouble off the tee. Again, keeping it in between the trees is the key part of tee shots. If you can't keep a driver in between the trees at fairway wood. Can't hit a fairway wood in between the trees. Hit a hybrid. Can't hit a hybrid in between the trees. Hit an iron. Okay, just get it in play. That's the main deal. So for our competitive golfers, we're trying to get at least 4 rounds of golf in, sometimes more. When we look at rules and strategies, it's a good time of the year to kind of reread the rules book. They come out every other year. This is an off season for rules, but this is also, it's not the most fun read in the world, but the worst way to learn rules is by breaking one. Okay, so there's nothing worse than learning a rule like you can't hit the pin, or is that disqualification? Is that a 1-stroke penalty or 2-stroke penalty? Stuff like that. Okay. Purposeful practice. So I talk a lot about games, drills, and exercises. So to me, drills are internal feels. So this is the time of year that you're working on developing your skills of what does your backswing feel like? What does your grip feel like? What part of your body transitions in the downswing? Stuff like that are drills. Okay. 30% of the time is going to be in games or target awareness activities. Okay, where's the ball going? Can you make it land in a square in an agility ladder, or can you hit it right at the target line? Can you hit it left of the target line? Can you hit it low? Can you hit it high? Different ball control and target-oriented activities. And then 15% of the time is going to be in exercises or things that you can do away from the golf course to help improve your game. That may be fitness, that may be reading, that may be listening to a podcast, anything like that. That helps you, your body or your mind. Then we spend about 5% of the time in assessments. We want to know where our players are at in each of these skill levels so we can benchmark their improvement. Okay. My elite training program, we train 4 days a week, usually 2 hours a day. So we're getting 16 sessions in, and it's pretty much year round if you're going to try to compete for a college scholarship. Next is kind of fitness and workouts. Usually we do those 3 to 4 times a week. Again, agility is can you move in multiple directions, right? And so golf is a very rotational game, so you need to be able to balance. Can you jump and twist? Can you run? Some of you are good laterally. Some of you are good up and down. Some of you are really good twisting. Most good golfers are going to be really good at twisting, and then a combination of the lateral part or the jumping part, right? Balance plays a big role. Like something simple that you can do to improve your balance is brush your teeth in the morning and close your eyes and stand on 1 foot, okay? Something simple like that will help just your balance. I can see a couple of you are like jumping up and trying that already. But you should be able to balance on 1 foot for about 10 seconds, okay? So do it for 10 seconds with your eyes open before you try 10 seconds with your eyes closed. If you get to 30 seconds, you're a rock star. So give that one a try later. Coordination, hand-eye coordination. We've got a little ball that we throw around that's lopsided, not quite like a football, but it's more like more racquetball size, but it's oblong and it just bounces differently. So we just throw that against the wall and kind of do a relay race, but it comes off the wall different. So just hand-eye coordination, things like that. Strength, obviously, we want to be strong enough, but more importantly, we want to be quick. In golf, we'd rather be, so speed is the other part or component of our workouts. Spend about a quarter of our time in speed training. It's always a good time to talk about fitness and nutrition. I always say for my competitive golfers, you want to be eating a lot of nuts or protein because your brain is made out of water and protein. And then you should be drinking half your body weight in ounces. So if you're 100 pounds, you want to drink 50 ounces, which is, most pop cans are 16 ounces. So a little more than 3 of those. Never pass up a water cooler. I always take at least 1, 2. I always kind of, my rule is if I'm on a par 3, I try to drink 3. If I'm on a par 5, I'm going to try to drink 5. But if you're having troubles finishing rounds, it may not be a technique issue. It may be mental game or hydration issue, because if you get dehydrated, you don't think very clearly. Okay. So things like trail mix, beef jerky, and water. There's really nothing better than water. I wish there was, but there's not much. The whole sports drinks, the Gatorades, and those kind of things tend to have too much sugar that spike your energy level. That the athletes may be representing those brands, but they're not consuming those during competition. So insight on that one. But rest and sleep, kids, it's 8 to 10 hours. There's no way around it. I wish you could do less. I'm probably 6 or 7, but I'm 45 and I don't need as much anymore. But for developing bodies and developing minds, this is when your recuperation happens. Your memory actually gets ingrained while you sleep. And it's very important for you guys to be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep minimum. So there's been some interesting research around that. The average professional athlete gets 10 hours of sleep a night. The highest level athletes, when I talk to some of the top end soccer players, hockey players, LeBron James and basketball, are getting 12 hours of sleep. Okay? Tiger Woods, on the other hand, is the anomaly. He's at like 4 to 5. Maybe that's why he made some bad choices, but we wish him all the best because it's fun to watch him play. Tournament planning. This next month is actually the kind of tournament planning season, or a lot of the tournaments, Junior PGA, AJGA, a lot of those, right? AJGA is out, Hurricane Tour and that kind of stuff is out, but you can start doing a little bit more of your planning in March rather than February. I'm a big proponent of multi-sport athletes. There's a lot of research on athletic development. I use Esteban Volley, and he found that based on like from 5 to 8, the average Olympian would play 5 to 8 sports. And then between 8 and 12, they'd play 3 or 4. Between 12 and 16, they'd play 2 or 3. And they were usually really, really good at 2 sports. And then when they were 16, they would pick their primary sport and go. So examples of that would be Ernie Els. He was a world-class tennis player as a kid. There's a number of examples, but that's the Olympic pathway. So really specialization is, while it may sound good, doesn't necessarily work for most. So big proponent of multi-sports. We'll take a look at that here in a minute. And then competition days, if you can get out and play in February a couple days, or that's like a weekend tournament, you know, once in February is usually pretty good. Last topic here is on equipment. So again, I do some club fitting over at Second Swing in Minnetonka. So if you want to come in and see me, I'd love to help. But this is the best time of year to do full bag fittings. All the new equipment comes in. You get your fitting now, get the clubs in 2 to 12 weeks, whatever it is. I'm not going to try to defend the manufacturers. It's kind of been tough predicting when the new stuff's coming in or order length. When it was an issue last year, it doesn't look like it's going to get much better this year. But this is the best time of year when all the new stuff comes out, and then you just play it. Like, just pick it and then forget it the rest of the year. Not a big fan of changing putters mid-season, changing wedges. You may need to change a wedge for groove sakes, and you probably should change a wedge about every 75 rounds. That's about how long a wedge will last, especially if you're practicing a lot. All right, where are we at for time here? Got a little bit more time, so I'm going to touch on a couple other pieces here. So this is preseason, or what's happening, or what I recommend. It's kind of like the high school spring season. We're going to start getting back outside in March and April. I'll let you kind of peruse through that one. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask any questions at this point, this would be a good time to do that. Again, I kind of make a note there on the bottom of when your kids are going through growth spurts, or when you were going through a growth spurt, every 3 inches, you should probably be refitted for your equipment. I got to have dinner with Rudy Durand, who was Tigers coach as a kid, and I asked him what was the one thing that most people don't know that you do or that you did with Tiger as a kid. He said he had him fit every 3 months, and he adjusted his equipment for length and lie angle as he was growing. So not sure if I would go to that extent, but all right. So in reference to the lopsided ball that you were talking about for hand-eye coordination, what is that ball called? Oh, that's a good question. It's like a reaction ball. I think if you look in Amazon, type in reaction ball, it's like a little yellow, greenish, kind of oblong ball. I'll put that in the notes and get that back. I'll send these slides and some other notes and resources to Kaylee when we get done here. All right. Feel free to pop in any of those other questions. All right. So tournament season, in season is going to look a little different. Probably the biggest thing that you'll see in the purposeful practice side of things is that's not the time to be making swing changes, right? So very few drills, very little time is spent in drills, but a lot more time is invested in games or target-oriented activities. Obviously, exercises, you're already walking 4 to 8 miles and around the golf, maybe 10 if you're playing a championship course. You're getting enough exercise, but still need to maintain, so you're kind of more in the maintenance phase. We cut back just a little bit on the practices and training. You're already going to matches for high school in that May, June period, but you will be playing quite a bit of golf. Questions on that one? So this would be the time of year that I would recommend, especially if you're trying to compete, if golf is your primary sport. Again, I have no problem if you're playing baseball or if you're playing travel hockey in the summer, whatever it happens to be. I'd probably recommend taking the season off. If you're a hockey player, but that's your prerogative on that one. Well, that tends to be the biggest culprit for early specialization in Minnesota anyways. But recommendation or kind of research shows that one sport for 3 months is probably an ideal way of training. And then once August hits, kids go back to school, they start playing football or basketball or whatever the fall soccer, tennis season, whatever happens to be in the fall. So this is also for equipment. I recommend checking your lofts and lies every 2 to 3 months. Just as a quick check. So there's nothing worse than making a good swing and your lie angles are off and the ball's not going where it should. Okay. All right. So I'm going to wrap up there. Leave some time for some questions. So if you want to get a hold of me, I do run my indoor academy at Twin Cities Orthopedic in Eden Prairie and do some fitting over at Second Swing in Minnetonka. And you can email me at cliffb@pga.com. My online programs are at golfachievement.com. For lesson information, it's bradfluthgolf.com. And then if you want to schedule a free 15-minute consultation or just have a chat about golf, always up for that. And my phone number is on the page there, 952-401-GOLF. With that, I will leave it up for some questions. And you can unmute yourself. Or Kaylee, do you have admin rights to unmute, or can I do that?
Yeah, I mean, if kids have a question, they can unmute themselves.
Okay. If you want to follow along or follow any of my social media accounts, pretty easy to find. It's usually Brad Pluth Golf at any of the uh, 5. I don't do Snapchat. I'm kind of morally opposed to Snapchat, but all the other ones you can find me on as well. All right, here we got a couple questions there. What's the best tournaments to play in to get noticed? So that's a great question. The nationally ranked, so there's a point system in the point ranking. So each tournament will, if it's not designated as a registered event, I know the Junior PGA is trying to do a lot better job with that now, having multi-day tournaments. Most of the national tournaments are multi-day events. So the Hurricane Tour locally here is really good. The Minnesota majors, the junior majors are good. Pine to Palm is always fun to play in. The Resorters is super fun to play in. Mostly local. But again, college coaches are probably looking for games that can travel, meaning you need to go play a little bit in California and Texas and Florida and North Carolina and see how your game shapes up against national competition. I know that can get quite expensive, but that's, if you're looking for a D1 college scholarship, that's a little bit what they're looking for, along with scores in the mid-60s. If you want to play D1 golf, they're probably not looking at your high school scores too much, because when you're playing 62 to 6,600 yards, it's too short and the golf courses are set up too easy. So there's not a very, it's not comparable to what you're going to see in college. So you got to play in some of these bigger events that are 6,800 yards or more, preferably like 7,000. Good question. What are some good places to play in the Midwest during February and March? There isn't. South, I think you kind of have to go south. There's a bunch of great indoor facilities here in Minneapolis that have, like, if you can jump on TrackMan, I know places like Ernie Rose has a great indoor facility. Down here in Eden Prairie, there's Inside Edge. There's, and again, last count, I think I found like 24 indoor facilities. It beats snow golf. But I take a trip down to in March down to Iowa. I go to the preserve at Rathbun Lake. My old teammate Darren Fisher is the director of golf down there, and my son and I usually take a few of either his buddies, or this year we're going to take our high school team down there. And then, or hopefully we will, but a couple clients, so we can spend 2 or 3 days down at the preserve at Rathbun Lake. They give us a good deal, and it's a great golf course. It's kind of like Rush Creek in the middle of Iowa, so there's not a whole lot of distractions. Good food, decent lodging, and you can zip around. And I think we've played 63 holes, a couple of back-to-back days, so you can zip around and play some good golf. But as far south as you need to drive, that may be St. Louis, and it might be Kansas City. I don't know. It depends on the time of year, February and March. Right. What do you think of the ideal number of events a young youth player during the Minnesota golf season? Isabella, can you be more specific to your age? And I could probably answer that. Actually, I'll just answer it this way. So for, like, our trained to learn, that 8 to 12 category, two to three a month, 3 to 5 in the season would be enough. Those are 1-day events. at that age. If you play in a couple 2-day events when you're 12, that would probably be good. And I was part of the U.S. Kids. Minnesota Junior PGA is awesome. One of the benefits for U.S. Kids is they have age-appropriate tees for those earlier ages. The concept just makes sense. So it's maybe a good option as well. They're running, or Kevin Williams is now running the summer and fall tour. So there's probably two options there. Actually, I spoke around there. So really, one a month is probably good. So at that age, the tournaments, having time to practice in between is good. Kind of start moving up the train to play, that 11 to 16-year-old age. You're looking at a few more events, or those are days of competition. In June, you might play a couple a week, every other week or once a week kind of stuff. I have tell one horse story. I'll leave his name out, but it ended up working out for him. But I didn't see him for, gosh, it was probably 4 weeks, so 28 days. He played in 24 tournaments in 28 days in 6 different states. That to me was a bit ridiculous and obnoxious and borderline abuse, because it's really hard to play competitive golf. Even though he qualified for a bunch of national tournaments, it was a bit challenging. So when I saw him, we went and watched a movie instead of doing a golf lesson, because so there can be too much, but again, each individual player is probably or needs to be assessed if they love to compete, especially if you're freshman, sophomore, trying to build your resume. Even junior year, those are critical years to develop your resume for college coaches, and you just need resumeable rounds. Usually 75 or less for D3, 72 or less for D2, 70 or less for D1. So as soon as you can get a couple of those in, I would say probably your work is done at that point for a lot of those. For the train to compete, or that high school age, kind of looking at, you're playing a couple rounds a week in competition, if not more. So again, these are recommendations, not necessarily requirements. Everybody's got different family schedules and stuff like that, but this is kind of based on research from Olympic development models. So this is what they did. Is that the same for girls as boys? Yes. All right. I'm at the scores. Scores, no. Typically, if you could shoot 85 or less, you probably play D3 right now for girls. 80 or less, D2, 75 or less, you can probably find a small D1 program, but still 72 or less if you want to play. And then again, that's your competitive scoring average, not necessarily 1 or 2 rounds. So that would be a better benchmark for the girls. But the girls are definitely improving rapidly across the country. So good question. All right. I'm running up on 45 minutes, so I'll be respectful of your time. So what I will do is send this, if you want a copy of this, I'll send this over, and Kaylee can send this out. This is kind of I talked about doing an on-course assessment. This is what the scorecard looks like. We're keeping track of tee shots. Was it in the fairway? What's the shot shape that it had? Is that lower box? Approach shots, did you hit the green or not? If you missed the green, I'm going to write down the number of the yardage, because that'll lead to a purposeful practice session for your approach shots going forward. Wedge shots, how many wedge shots did you hit? If I see any 2s after hitting a wedge, I'm gonna write down that number, or if you hit it outside of maybe 30 feet, probably write down that number. Kind of depends on how far away. You could use those same numbers if you're trying to break par at 6%. So at if you're at 50 yards, your goal is to hit it about to 9 feet or less, which also at 100 yards, 6% is 18 feet, which is about the tour average from 100 yards, which may surprise some people because they show all the glory shots on TV. But if you look at the average over the course of a year for the whole field, it's about 18 feet from 100 yards. Might be 15, but somewhere in there, pretty close. And then number of putts and first putt distance is what I record on that. So based on the scorecard, that leads to your purposeful practice session. There's some other simple ways of keeping some scores, some other scorecards that I like to use. There's some directions on there as well. So there'll be the purposeful practice forms on there. And I'll send this over. My contact information's on there as well. So thanks, everybody. Again, I'll stick around if you have any more questions, but tried to keep this right around 45 minutes and enjoyed sharing with you. All right, Kaylee. How's that for on time? I went a minute over.
Yeah, no, that was great. Once again, thanks for everybody for joining us here. You can find all our resources. We'll link the recording again back on the education series webpage on minnesotajuniorgolf.com. Again, if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to let us know. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you at the next education series on February 21st. So thanks, everybody.
All right.